this, the highlight of the entire year, period. It's got to be the game of the decade.
On February 21st, 1981, Saturday Night Live was already struggling. Then Charles Rocket did something that changed television forever. During a live sketch, he said one word that had never been heard on American TV before. Over 300 people called in just minutes. NBC executives panicked as sponsors pulled millions in advertising. But here's the shocking part. This wasn't an accident. In 1992, Rocket finally admitted the truth. He had planned it all along. But the real question remains. Was it worth destroying everything just to be remembered? The answer might surprise you. He was born on August 28, 1949. In Bangor, Maine. But this wasn't just any small-town birth. His grandfather was Raymond H. Fogler, a man who once served as Assistant Secretary of the Navy. That kind of legacy doesn't go unnoticed. But Charles didn't follow the family path. He was one of 8 kids, surrounded by noise, chaos, and competition for attention. That wild energy followed him through life. In 1967, at 18, he entered the Rhode Island School of Design. Originally dreaming of being a truck driver, he turned instead to illustration and film. And almost immediately, he became a legend on campus. He wasn't just another art student, he was everywhere. He hosted events, made films, and even created bizarre eco-superheroes named Captain Packard and Lobo with Dan Gosh. In 1968, they actually crashed a General Assembly meeting, dressed as those characters, filming the whole thing. Politicians didn't know what hit them. Rocket didn't care. He made experimental short films that blended animation and live action. One was called Tits and Trucks. It came out in 1970 and stirred controversy, but also admiration. He pushed the boundaries so far that students either loved him or feared where he'd go next. And when it came to music, he didn't just sit on the sidelines. In 1969, he formed a rock band called the Fabulous Motels. He sang, he played accordion. He didn't care if it made sense. What mattered was energy. One night, November 15, 1970, the amps exploded during a show. Flames broke out. People panicked. Bottles flew. 2 bandmates were hurt. Rocket somehow kept playing, dodging debris, squeezing accordion notes into the chaos. Police came, 5 were arrested. But Charles wasn't shaken. That night became part of his legend. While doing all this, he also poured his sarcasm and rage into underground zines. From 1968 to 1971, he drew satirical comics, mocking professors, mocking the war, mocking anything that looked like power. In one 1970 cartoon, he made school deans look like clowns. The administration hated it. They tried to expel him in 1969 over indecent drawings, but he kept going. He and his friends would sneak around at night, slipping copies of the zines into dorms and lounges. One time, 200 copies were seized. That only added fuel to his fire. He was tapping into the underground press boom that had swept America. Thousands of college students were doing the same thing, but few were doing it like Charles Rocket. By early 1971, just before graduation, he landed an internship at WJAR, a local TV station in Providence. It wasn't glamorous. It was unpaid. America's unemployment rate was hovering around 12%. But Charles stood out. He edited Vietnam War footage, brutal, unfiltered clips, over 50 hours per week. One day, by accident, he aired raw protest footage without approval. More than 300 viewers called in furious. It almost cost him the internship. But producers noticed something. His edits were clever. Viewership rose in test segments. He was onto something. He graduated with his BFA that May. But one moment haunted him. It was April 22, 1970, Earth Day. Nixon was escalating the war. Charles joined a protest at RISD with 500 students. Police came, things spiraled. He threw leaflets. Officers arrested him for disorderly conduct. He spent 6 hours crammed into a holding cell with 30 others. That day changed him. He later said it gave birth to his rebel without a pause attitude. It wasn't just about performance anymore. It was personal. Over 4,000 people were arrested in anti-war protests that same month. But Charles Rocket carried that moment into every role, every joke, every controversy he would later face on national television. In 1972, Charles Rocket married Beth Crellin in a way no one expected. Instead of a church or city hall, they said their vows on the battleship USS Massachusetts, with its giant naval guns looming in the background. Family members were stunned. This wasn't the kind of wedding they'd pictured. But for Charles and Beth, It matched their wild energy and craving for something different. After that, they packed up and moved to Nashville. It wasn't glamorous. He worked as a production assistant at WTVF-TV under the name Charles Kennedy, pulling long 12-hour shifts for only $12,000 a year. Most days, he skipped meals just to keep up. Beth picked up waitress jobs to keep them afloat. But even then, his humor came through. He once prank called his own station, pretending to be a celebrity. By 1973, his fast-talking style started getting him noticed. But the stress hit hard. Money problems led to fights. Looking back, Charles admitted that move to Nashville wasn't just about chasing opportunity. It was his way of running from a dead-end art scene in Rhode Island, where he'd once played accordion in a band called the Fabulous Motels. In 1974, things started to shift. Charles decided to leave his birth name behind and became Charles Rocket. Some co-workers laughed at the name, calling it over the top, but it meant something to him. He wanted his rise to be explosive, like a rocket. That same year, he moved to Pueblo, Colorado, and finally landed a spot on camera. KOA-TV hired him as a weatherman, paying him $18,000. What made him different wasn't the forecast, it was how he delivered it. One day, he'd wear a cowboy outfit during a dust storm. Another day, he'd improvise jokes live on air. It worked. Ratings jumped 15% in 6 months. His height, 6'5", and deep voice made him memorable, but also made some co-workers uneasy. He also started hosting a kids' show, The Super Show, where he added funny commentary to old 1950s serials. About 10,000 kids tuned in every episode, but Rocket had a chaotic side too. In 1974, he accidentally aired a reel full of bloopers live. It almost got him fired. Still, on July 15th that year, he legally changed his name to Charles Rocket. He wasn't just a cameraman anymore, he was building a brand. Then came 1975. One night, during a huge blizzard that dumped 18 inches of snow, Rocket made the mistake of ad-libbing crude jokes on live TV, comparing the storm to his ex on a bad day, and throwing in risque comments about wind. He triggered 200 angry viewer calls. The FCC got involved. His bosses suspended him for 2 weeks without pay. He had to go on air and apologize to nearly 60,000 viewers. Some might have been crushed. Rocket just laughed it off, saying he made the weather more exciting. But behind the scenes, things were tense. Beth urged him to get therapy. Their marriage took another hit. Still, even in the middle of the scandal, his creative touch didn't go unnoticed. In 1976, he won a local Emmy for his reporting. That controversy actually made him more popular. Ratings jumped 25%, but the warning was clear. TV had rules, and Rocket was always testing them. By 1977, Rocket returned to Rhode Island. He joined WPRI-TV in Providence on June 15th, earning $25,000 and creating something brand new. It was called The Rocket Report. This wasn't your normal news. Rocket hit the streets with a camera, talking to oddball locals, like one guy who swore aliens abducted him. People loved it. Viewership shot up by 30%. About 100,000 homes tuned in. And in 1978, he won another regional Emmy. But he didn't stop pushing boundaries. On July 4th, 1977, he staged a fake riot as part of a bit. It got 150 complaints and led to a short suspension. His bosses weren't amused. Still, Rocket didn't change. He clashed with management constantly, once even storming out of a meeting. He added his accordion to some segments, playing music mid-report. Some people thought it was brilliant. Others said it was unprofessional. But for Rocket, it was real. He later told friends coming back to Rhode Island felt like a desperate reset after the burnout in Colorado. Week after week, he walked the line between comedy and journalism, and he didn't care who thought it was too much. He made 52 episodes that proved his style wasn't just a phase, it was who he was. In 1979, Charles Rocket was 30 years old and working as a news anchor in a small Colorado town. He went by his real name, Charles Claverie, and his job was stable but forgettable. But everything changed when some demo tapes started making the rounds at NBC. They featured something strange, fake street interviews where Rocket, calling it The Rocket Report, would blend serious news with wild jokes. Sometimes he mocked disasters, sometimes he acted like the camera had caught a meltdown. In one bit, He pretended to eat his microphone on live TV. It was weird. Some called it unprofessional, but others, especially at NBC, called it genius. Even though those tapes included 12 minutes of raw outtakes full of swearing, the scouts liked the chaos. So that summer, Rocket left Colorado and moved to New York City. Within months, he was landing short guest spots on network shows. He was getting $500 per episode, a huge jump from the $18,000 he made all year back home. But what shocked people most was that he had no comedy training at all. It was all instinct, all energy. He was either going to break through or blow up. The next summer, in 1980, Saturday Night Live was falling apart. Its creator, Lorne Michaels, had just left on May 24th. NBC didn't know what to do. Ratings were falling. The network was seriously thinking about canceling it, but producer Jean Dumanian was put in charge of saving the show. She needed new faces, fast. That July, Rocket auditioned inside 30 Rockefeller Plaza, surrounded by nearly 200 other hopefuls. He didn't hold back. He came in as a fake anchor, just like his old tapes, but this time he added even more chaos. He started yelling at the teleprompter. Then he screamed profanities. Then he pretended to report live on a riot while smashing a desk. He even cut himself on a piece of prop glass. Everyone froze. Some laughed. Some were horrified. But Dumanian called it genius. His audition became infamous. 17 curse words in one bit, the highest ever for an SNL tryout. Many thought he'd blown his chance, but Dumanian believed the show needed someone dangerous. Rocket got the part, and during those 3 wild days of tryouts, he also formed a strange bond with another outsider, Eddie Murphy. By August, callbacks were underway. About 50 performers made it that far, but Rocket didn't blend in. Inside a gloomy New York studio, under low lights and rising tension, he struck up a friendship with a young comic named Gilbert Gottfried. Rocket was from quiet news stations. Gottfried was from loud comedy clubs. They joked that they were the rejects. Late at night, they stood outside smoking and laughing about how they didn't belong. One day, they improvised a disturbing routine where they mocked dead celebrities. Gottfried screamed in voices. Rocket stayed calm and cold. The audience laughed, but not everyone liked it. Rocket, meanwhile, was already making enemies. In one callback alone, he demanded 14 changes to the script. He wanted more chaos, more swearing, more destruction. One writer snapped and walked out. Others called Rocket arrogant. One memo even called him a monster. At one point, Rocket threatened to quit unless he got his way. Dumanian was stunned. She had already decided he was going to be the star. At an after-party that month, Rocket and Gottfried prank called Lorne Michaels. It was funny at the time, but even that night hinted at something else, that season 6 was going to be a disaster, and Rocket's ego would help bring it down. Then came September. On the 10th, Rocket signed the contract. $40,000. He was now officially a featured player on SNL. He moved his wife Beth and their young son Zane from quiet Rhode Island to a tight Manhattan apartment that cost $1,200 a month. It was a huge risk, especially with the show in crisis. But Rocket wasn't shy. In a bold interview with the New York Times that month, he said he would become the next John Belushi. He promised to dominate the show, aiming for 12 sketches per episode, a number that no other cast member had even attempted. He wasn't joking. He launched his own recurring bit called The Rocket Report, running into New York streets with a film crew. These weren't safe sketches. In one, he chased cabs on foot. He got hurt twice that season. The network was nervous, but Dumanian kept defending him. She even started calling him a mix between Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. That only made things worse. Rocket started asking for top billing. He fought with other cast members about airtime. Writers grew tired. So did the crew. By the end of that season, the ratings had dropped to an average of 4.2, and nearly 70% of the cast would be gone by the next year. It was February 21st, 1981. Saturday Night Live was already going through a rough season, and on that night, things exploded. Charles Rocket, who was supposed to be one of the show's rising stars, appeared in a sketch that made fun of the famous Who Shot JR scene from the show Dallas. In the sketch, Rocket was in a wheelchair, pretending to have been shot. Everyone huddled around him on camera, and then he casually said, "Oh man, it's the first time I've ever been shot in my life. I'd like to know who the fuck did it." The moment those words left his mouth, everything changed. The crowd gasped. There were awkward laughs, but the shock was real. NBC's phones started ringing non-stop. Over 300 people called to complain in just a few minutes. It was the first time the F word had ever gone out live on American television. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted. Jean Dumagnon, the producer, was terrified. The FCC could fine them up to $25,000 per violation. The network panicked. Censors scrambled. The camera cut away. And Rocket just sat there, calm, as if nothing had happened. But that calmness only made it worse. The episode averaged 12 million viewers, far below the show's peak of 20 million, and now it was in danger of being shut down altogether. Executives started asking if live shows were even worth the risk anymore. The F word went out at exactly 12:48 a.m. Right after he said it, the camera caught Charlene Tilton gasping, "Oh my God," while other cast members froze. Gilbert Gottfried tried not to laugh. Gail Mathias stared in shock. In the control room, the director, Dave Wilson, lost it. He slammed his hand on the console and yelled, "That's it! That's the end of live television!" The uncensored moment had just been seen by around 15 million homes. The calls didn't stop, around 50 a minute. Some people even threatened to boycott NBC. But this wasn't Rocket's first time crossing the line. He'd been known to improvise edgy lines before. This one, though, went way too far. NBC issued a dozen warnings internally that same night. The show was already struggling with last-minute script changes and barely their rehearsals. That season alone had 7 other near misses with live profanity. Backstage was tense. There were reports of cast members shouting at each other. Sponsors panicked. General Electric pulled out $2 million in advertising. Rocket tried to brush it off later and told someone it was just a word. But NBC wasn't laughing. What's surprising is that Rocket didn't get fired right away. Instead, he was forced to go on what they called an apology tour. From February 22 to March 6th, he met with more than 20 network executives. Each meeting was long, and he had to read the same fake-sounding line over and over. "I deeply regret my lapse in judgment." But in private, he was furious. He blamed the mess on how rushed everything was. He said he'd only had 4 hours to rehearse, and 3 different writers had given him conflicting notes. Even more shocking, he actually got paid for those apology meetings, about $5,000 in overtime. He was working 18-hour days and was completely drained. There were even 5 reported shouting matches that same week among the cast. NBC didn't fire him instantly because they were scared of a lawsuit. His contract guaranteed him 13 episodes, so they made him do awkward photo ops with station managers smiling for the camera while boiling inside. It was a dark time for the show. Staff was quitting left and right. They had found cocaine in 2 of the dressing rooms. Nearly half the crew turned over in just a few months. The scandal didn't end the show. It made the next episode jump to 14 million viewers. But the damage was done. Somehow, Rocket returned for the March 7 episode hosted by Bill Murray. He got through it without a single mistake. But people behind the scenes said he was already marked. On March 10th, producer Dick Ebersol replaced Jean Dumagnon and immediately cleaned house. He fired Rocket and most of the cast, 6 performers in total. NBC slashed $1.2 million from the budget. But here's what no one expected. Ebersol had been planning to fire Rocket before the F word ever happened. Memos from January showed that he'd already been flagged for missing rehearsals and fighting with writers over constant script rewrites. The profanity just made it easier. Still, fans actually tried to get him reinstated. NBC got over 500 signed petitions. His final episode drew 13 million viewers, which was more than the week before. Ebersol later said that the firing was mostly a creative decision, but Rocket's career never recovered. Over the next 2 years, he only managed to land 7 minor roles. The scandal had cost NBC $500,000 in ad revenue, and it followed Rocket everywhere. Then came something almost unbelievable. In a 1992 interview, Rocket finally admitted that he had planned the F-bomb. He'd told friends the night before, on February 20th, at a bar in Manhattan that he was going to make them remember him. He'd been furious for weeks. Ratings were dropping fast. That season only had 10 million viewers per episode, down from 18 million the year before. He lost his weekend update spot to a guest after just 5 shows. Salaries had been cut by 20%. Rocket rehearsed the line in his dressing room and timed it perfectly, knowing the censors were distracted. Later, Eddie Murphy would call it suicidal genius. That season was filled with drug parties. 3 people ended up in the hospital. Rocket blamed producer Jean Dumignon for surrounding herself with people who only said yes to her. After he was fired, he got blacklisted from network TV. He battled depression. In 1985, he tried to end his life, but then, somehow, he started to come back. In 1985, Rocket joined the show Moonlighting as Bruce Willis's brother. He played Richard Addison and appeared in 12 episodes between 1985 and 1989. He brought sarcasm and charm to the role, and critics loved it. This was a huge moment. He had been the guy who got fired for swearing on live TV, and now he was on a hit show with real screen time. People began to see him differently, but he couldn't escape the image entirely. In 1986, he guest starred on Miami Vice in an episode that aired on February 14th. He played a sleazy businessman tied to drug deals. It was only 1 episode, but it made an impact. That same year, his past almost caught up with him again. In 1983, he had been arrested for public intoxication after a fight at a party. He smashed a glass and yelled obscenities. His blood alcohol level was 0.15. He spent a night in jail and was sentenced to 6 months of counseling. That arrest nearly broke him. In 1984, he attempted suicide, but then he got Moonlighting. It kept him going. In 1987, Rocket played a major villain in the sci-fi show Max Headroom. He appeared in all 14 episodes until 1988. He played a cold, manipulative executive in a future where TV ruled everything. Critics called him perfect for the role, but even that show got canceled quickly. He had filmed it in Vancouver starting March 1987. The show predicted a world obsessed with screens. Rocket, who had once been destroyed by a live broadcast, was now playing a man who controlled what everyone saw. His acting was praised, but the job ended too soon. From 1986 to 1989, he started doing voice work in animation. He was on The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers, voicing all kinds of aliens and villains. He worked on more than 20 out of the 65 episodes. This gave him some peace. It was work without the pressure of being on camera. But even then, rumors of his past kept floating around. He recorded in New York, usually alone. Kids loved the show. Around 5 million watched weekly. He was slowly rebuilding, bit by bit. Then came more roles. In 1988, he was in Earth Girls Are Easy. He played a cheating doctor. The movie flopped, losing over $6 million. But Rocket left a mark. In 1990, he had a small but serious role in Dances with Wolves. The movie went on to win 7 Oscars and made over $400 million. Rocket only had a few scenes, but he stood tall, literally, at 6'2", bringing authority to his character. Yet again, he couldn't shake the shadow of what had happened in 1981. In 1993, he appeared in Hocus Pocus. He played the father, Dave Dennison. The movie didn't do well at first, but later became a cult classic. In 1994, he was the villain in Dumb and Dumber. His character, Nicholas Andre, delivered lines that fans still quote, but he only got paid $50,000, while the film made nearly $250 million. The directors clashed with him over tone, and again, he played the creep, the slimeball, the guy who snaps and yells. It became a pattern he couldn't escape. Between 1995 and 2003, he had some TV appearances, voice roles in shows like Static Shock and Titan AE, but things were winding down. On a cold October morning in 2005, Charles Rocket was found lying in a quiet field near his home in Canterbury, Connecticut. His throat had been cut with one of his own tools. The blade came from his workbench. He was 56 years old. There was no note, no signs of struggle, no witnesses, just silence. 10 days later, officials ruled it suicide, but the method was rare. Only a tiny fraction of people take their own life this way. His wife, Beth, was the one who found him. Those who knew Charles said he was the kind who faced problems head-on, not someone who'd vanish into a field and bleed alone. He used to talk about how one moment had followed him like a curse. It happened on live TV, in front of millions.